Pamela, are you available to start your presentation now, or shall we wait until 11 o'clock?
Well, good morning, everyone. Excellent. Okay, well, thank you very much. And I am ready to go. I will just share my screen and I think we'll get started then. All right, well, welcome everyone. I'm so pleased to be joining you today on this incredible opportunity for us to get together and talk about the right to read, something that is incredibly important to all of us as we think about our students, our learners, and the future of our children. So thank you, Catherine, for this invitation. And I would just like to say how fortunate we are to be presenting with Dr. Giorgio and Matthew and Heather. I've had the opportunity to work with Dr. Giorgio and Matthew before, and I'm always so humbled by the wisdom that they bring in. I am thrilled to be able to see and hear from Heather a little bit later and answer the questions from all those who are listening today. So a little bit about myself. I am currently the superintendent of Lakeland Catholic Schools. I've been a teacher, administrator, and at central office here at Lakeland Catholic. I've been in education for over 20 years, and my trade from my heart is teaching English language arts, and that's where I did get my degree, was in English language. And so when we talk about literacy, we talk about the right to read, it is a passion and a desire of mine to ensure that all of our students do have that, that right. So Lakeland Catholic Schools, we are a division that is in northeastern Alberta. We serve 9 schools. We serve students through preschool through grade 12. We have 4 communities. We're very geographically and demographically diverse. And we have 11% of our students we serve students who have exceptionalities. We have 15% of our students who are First Nation, Métis, and Inuit, and we have 10% of our students who are students who have English with additional languages. We also have a dual track system, which is French immersion as well as English. And today I'm going to share our story with you. And I just want to also say that the story that I'm going to share today is really chapter 1 in this narrative of our journey. So I would title this chapter The Beginning, because that's really where we are. I always tell anyone when we talk about our literacy journey that we are truly in our infancy. I don't know when we'll get out of this chapter, but that's where we're staying right now. So our core beliefs really drive all that we do. And one of the things that we're very, one of our non-negotiables is that we align all that we do to these core beliefs, and we make sure that they drive all of our actions. We believe in the potential of all of our students and all of our staff to achieve excellence. When our staff are empowered and invested, they reach the bar of excellence, even when they're venturing into uncharted waters. And it's for this reason that we believe that we have an obligation to serve our staff and our students in ways that are going to ensure equity in access and in learning. And so that's really when we looked at what was happening with literacy across our division. We knew we had to make some changes, and these changes needed to be immediate. They couldn't wait. We knew we needed to, because our core belief was around continuous improvement, that was a commitment that we needed to follow through with. And we also, because we support evidence-based improvements and we wanted to ensure that we continue to embed them into the daily work of our staff. We wanted to ensure that we empowered our staff so that they knew how important that was. So we powered through despite last year being, pandemic conditions. We aligned our decision making to the core beliefs, and we made some significant changes across our division for all of our schools. So I just want to share some context with you that drove some of these actions. So prior to the start of 21-22 school year, we knew that there was a need for change in practice in supporting our students in both in literacy. So we have historical strength in leveraging professional learning communities. Our division has practiced professional learning communities by taking time in the day bi-weekly and allocating that time for staff to come together collaboratively in professional learning communities for the last several years. So we have that historical strength. It's sacred time. No one questions it. We knew, and so we decided to leverage that time. So we required our teachers to come together and ask these three critical questions around literacy. What do we expect our students to learn? How do we know that they're learning? And how are we going to respond if they're not learning? So when we asked those questions, we found that they shared that their current practices were no longer adequate around literacy. We also were practicing collaborative response, also known as RTI in some areas. And so they were having critical conversations around literacy in regards to students and some of the work that was happening inside of classrooms, but they weren't sure what the solution was. So we knew we needed to change our practice in order to support all of our students, in order to meet their academic potential. So we were listening, but we weren't sure how we could make such a system-wide change. And this was happening in 2020 and 2021, the year before we decided to make the change. So as pandemic conditions were progressing, we were quickly realizing how many students' learning was hampered by extended absences due to illness, isolation requirements, an inability to connect, or just because of different at-home reasons, family reasons. There was an inability to opt out of joining due to technology issues. As a result, we knew that there was significant learning gaps. And so staff on their own independently had started to explore different structured literacy, different types of structured literacy, professional learning, and the impacts that it would have on Tier 1 universal instruction and on Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention. And so as these different ideas were brought to us at senior administration, we decided that we needed to capitalize on this opportunity. Further to that, Alberta Education brought forward something called the Learning Loss Grant Funding to increase the amount of Tier 3 learning intervention sessions that were available to students. And so we committed to concentrate our efforts on grades 1 to 3 in 2021 and 2022. So what did this mean for us? Well, it meant that in the following year, in order to answer these questions, we needed to do a couple of things. First of all, we knew we couldn't do it on our own. So we decided we needed to get the right people at the table to advise us. And so after listening to our staff gathering some feedback, having some really critical conversations, surveying our stakeholders. I was in conversation with Dr. Giorgio from the U of A, and through his guidance, I began the work of implementing structured literacy at a division-wide level. And so at this time, our work consisted of reaching out to other school divisions who had implemented structured literacy, reading case studies, reviewing data, researching literacy implementation plans, always asking for input, reflecting and contextualizing for our own unique situations. I had conversations with Matthew, for instance, had conversations with other superintendents who had also traveled down this pathway. The smaller size of our division was a benefit in this instance because we were able to make a commitment that would meet the literacy and learning needs of all of our students. We reviewed our internal capacity of the staff and we assembled a lead team. And that lead team consisted of our senior principals, our senior admin team of principals, of directors, inclusive education coordinators, anyone who had literacy experience and who would be able to inform us at a division-wide level in broad strokes so that we would be able to have the most wealth of information to be able to create strong schedules, best practices of instruction, well thought out resources, a large network of experts, because this is all brand new for us. Nobody had all of the answers, but together we would be able to find the best answers that we could at the appropriate time. And that was really important for everyone on our team to understand, is that nobody had to have all the answers all the time. But what we needed to do was be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know, but I'll find you the answer. We'll work elbow to elbow and we'll get the answers that we need together. And that made all of the difference, because as the superintendent, being able to sit in the professional learning sessions with your kindergarten teachers and be seen as a learner made an incredible difference to the way that we were able to move forward in as a community of learners. So on that note, as we moved into the spring of 2021, Lakeland Catholic had the good fortune of partnering with Dr. Giorgio. And as he said, we truly benefited from this partnership because we were able to use the screeners and use some of the spreadsheets and the conversion tables, etc., so that some of that work was done for us, and then we could really focus on work in the classroom, working with our teachers elbow to elbow, and putting our efforts into making sure that our teachers were spending time learning structured literacy and working with students to improve upon their literacy growth. So Dr. Giorgio worked with us in the division, both in the formal research project with the Alberta Research Project, and then also with us as a division partner. And so this benefit was twofold, because we developed this strong relationship because our students were able to work with him our teachers and students were able to work with him as part of the research project, and that information will then be shared throughout the province to better inform our system. But also our teachers were able to work with Dr. Giorgio on a more intimate level, and we really were able to have his expertise kind of calling upon him and his team really whenever we whenever we needed him. So by providing professional development for us, recommendations for resources, recommendations for networks, pointing us in the right direction for other experts in the field, we were able to move our division forward. So by the time our teachers left in June of 2021, we had provided them with professional learning on literacy screeners, which were the 3 T's, which we had decided to utilize. We provided them with professional learning on the 5 pillars or the 5 keys to literacy. And we sent them away with our commitment to supporting structured literacy, including pull-out intervention for all our grades 1 to 3 students who needed it in the upcoming year. We committed to hearing what their concerns were and the concerns that they voiced in regards to the current practices in literacy no longer meeting the needs of the students that they were working with. So then when they returned in September, we were prepared, and what I'm going to share with you is our story. And our story has 3 key elements. The 3 key elements, I'm not going to go through chronologically, but as is true with all change, it's more of an integrated and multi-component approach, which operates in concert. And so because these components inform each other on an ongoing basis, I'm going to share them one after the other, and then as I come to the end of my presentation, I'll talk about how what we've learned from them and how we'll move forward in our reflections as we refine them. So this year with data, prior to this year, the importance of making data-informed decisions was a core belief. But this past year, we really dialed in to inviting and challenging our teachers to analyze the data in a more targeted, issues-driven conversation on a regular basis to drive student growth. This was a new expectation, and it created opportunities for staff at all levels to engage in learning around data collection and data analysis. Our driver was our core belief that data is going to start conversations. It's never going to end them. And we wanted to ensure our staff had access to the data whenever they needed it. This URL is our data resource center. We created a data repository, and this was a welcome shift in operations this year. All formal screening data for grades kindergarten to grade 12 was entered on school-specific data overview spreadsheets in a division Google shared drive. And these spreadsheets could be viewed and edited by site-specific administrators and teachers, as well as division leaders. And this information will follow the student as soon as they enter our system. They have, they're entered into these spreadsheets, and it follows the student until they exit our system in grade 12. This is imperative so that their growth is recorded and shown. And this invites collaborative conversations at all levels. These conversations were not happening previously. And we are seeing remarkable changes in practice as teachers are becoming excited about these student-centered conversations, which are driven by the evidence that they're seeing from the data that has been recorded. So in order to create these spreadsheets, we had to work with our technology team, with our administrators and our literacy leads to ensure that the site was simple but yet effective, so that it could be collected and collated and tracked over time. I say this in one simple sentence, but this was not a simple process. And so we learned after the fact how to house this. And in the end, we landed on, I think it was Microsoft Teams was where we ended up housing it. But it took us a while to find the proper place where everybody knew how to access it and use it. And it took us a while for us to communicate it. And so having a centralized place for us to house the data, that's a non-negotiable. Having everybody agree where to house the data, that is critical. And getting there, incredibly important. So that's a piece that moving, if we could go back and reflect on it, we would have a better process in place to get there. So that would be one of the key drivers for change that I would go back and change and work with my division technology team to make sure that we had a better system in place for that. So that would be a tip and trick, and just a process-driven tip and trick for anybody who's watching this and has a bit of a tech background, is making sure that you have those pieces in place. But once you have it in place, all of our staff and everyone who is using it is so grateful, because that information is at their fingertips and they can use it for a variety of different purposes, because having the data to inform those conversations and change practice has changed the way that we view students, we view ourselves, and we view our pedagogy. So where we have done this, I hope you can see my screen. So where we have done this is we put it into a website, and it's under the resources for instruction and assessment. And this is where everything is housed. And these school data overview spreadsheets are placed right here. And they're at each individual school site, where you can click on them. And if you have access, you can go into them and see your student information. All right. So the screens that we used provided us with the norm data that George was speaking about earlier, that could be collected and analyzed over time, despite any changes in staffing and sometimes the high truancy rates that were that happened. And these were timely, they were efficient, they were economical. We chose these screeners based on advice from other school jurisdictions, from our trusted experts in the field, and other provincial successes, and also from our participation in the research project. Again, to ensure consistency in data collection and to provide timely professional learning in data analysis, so that our teachers and our school leaders could have these focused conversations around literacy instruction and using the data as evidence, we were really tight about the assessment timeline. And we wanted to make sure that this was communicated in a way that was very clear. So we created an assessment timeline for our division. We communicated this to teachers and principals. We had it posted, and they could reach out to any of our administrators, any of our senior administrators. They could reach out to our communications officer for access to this assessment timeline. And we just had it posted as well. So it's a little bit small, but it has the grades, it has the assessment, it has the timeline, it has where it has to be uploaded to, it has all of the pertinent information, and every teacher had access to this. This was the feedback we got from this was incredibly positive, and we were We will continue to do this. Again, the communication was incredibly important because everybody knew what the expectation was for the assessments and what they needed to do. And whenever you're embarking on something that's new, if you have all the information at hand, what you're supposed to do with it, when it needed to be done, it created a sense of predictability and ease. And so we wanted to make sure that we reduce the anxiety and the barriers. And so this assessment timeline was instrumental in doing just that. Additionally, we shared Google spreadsheets for each interventionist for data collection, on which she recorded group progress through the sequence of lessons for student attendance and, most importantly, for progress monitoring. And this was one way that we were able to support the crucial connection between interventionists and classroom teachers to ensure seamless instruction for our students as they transition between the two contexts of the Tier 3 intervention and then classroom instruction. I'll repeat myself around data starting the conversations, because this is really demonstrated what we saw demonstrated. Our classroom teachers and the interventionists were able to have those critical conversations about students' literacy achievement, which is based on the data that's available in those spreadsheets. And the conversations prior to this year, we didn't see happening as often, as targeted, or as specific, or as consistently. But it was now, because we had the data to support and the evidence, and we are seeing how this is driving the change, and this change is sustainable to universal literacy instruction. All right, so that's the key element for data, and we're going to continue on with this. It's the beginning, it's the inception of it, and we'll finesse it, but we're well on our way. So the next element is around professional learning, and we understand the critical nature of professional learning as a key driver. So we had 3 goals in professional development this year, and we know how change of this magnitude requires that all teachers have foundational learning around structured literacy, the 5 pillars or the 5 keys. What does that mean in the context of universal literacy instruction? How is it different from balanced literacy? We also need to honor our commitment to provide all students who needed intervention with the pull-out 16-week program. So we had to train interventionists. So we needed to provide very specific professional development for our interventionists. And then we wanted to provide our school-based leaders with instructional leadership, professional development. So we provided them with opportunities to work with Matthew, who you'll hear from later today. So we had professional learning for teachers around structured literacy and the 5 pillars of literacy instruction and screening and data analysis. We had interventionist professional learning. We had leadership professional learning. So those 3, basically those three types of professional learning, main goals for professional learning this year. And so when we talk about our professional learning for our teachers, in May of 2021, we began the first professional learning around screening assessments. So we wanted to set the table or set them up for success. So we provided that in May of 2021. Then we provided that same screening, professional learning, in August again as a refresher. And we provided them with structured literacy foundations in August of 2021. And then we provided them in October of 2021, structured literacy, professional learning again, so that we compartmentalized it, so that it wasn't just a one and done, so that it was in sizable chunks. For our administrators, we provided them with their professional learning throughout the year in October and then in February. And then for our interventionists, we provided them with their interventionist training in August. Then again, we provided it throughout the year as George and his team came to the division in October, then again in January, then again in May, so that it was ongoing and it was consistent, so that we were always aligning, refining, and ensuring that as questions came up, we were there to support and to provide some elbow to elbow, individualized supports and instruction for each group that we were targeting at that time, because no group needed the exact same professional development. It was really unique to each professional learning experience, and that's what made it so interesting and so unique. And that's something that we've learned for this year as well, as we are creating professional learning opportunities moving into the upcoming year. What we found as well is that as we did that, it was critical that our senior administrators, including myself, honored the work that was being done with the teachers and with the interventionists and with our administrators, and that I took the time to participate in that professional learning, so that as I alluded to earlier, the change that was happening at the division level wasn't seen as happening to us, but we were all journeying together. That I believed in it, and I do believe in it as much as everyone else, and that the investment that I had for our students and for our staff was as great as the investment that the teachers had. And so in order for that to happen, I had to be seen and I had to be present. And so with each of the professional development opportunities, I wanted to be there, be present, and to give feedback. So as we move into this upcoming year, we're going to continue with very specific, targeted professional development that is unique and tailored to the needs of each group of each professional group. So our kindergarten teachers will receive specific literacy professional learning for their needs. That's very different than our grade 3 teachers or our French immersion teachers or our administrators or our classroom support teachers. Our classroom support teachers are supporting our inclusive ed students and our inclusive ed teachers. So we need to make sure that they have the supports and the skills in order to work with the teachers and the students who they care for and lead. I want to also reiterate the importance of not recreating the wheel and making sure that you reach out to the experts in the field. One of the most valuable professional learning sessions opportunities that we have ever had was when we had George and Matthew come to our division, though for 2 sessions, and work with our administrators, walking us through data analysis and how to apply that collection and analysis to informing classroom instruction and becoming more efficacious literacy leaders in our schools. And so without reaching out to those who have journeyed and who are further in their narrative than the beginning of the chapter, the beginning chapters of their journey, you know, you can't do it alone. So we were really grateful for Matthew's expertise and George's expertise, and we look forward to working with them again. And we rely heavily on others who can help inform us. So that's professional learning. And, you know, there's lots of educational partners out there. There's lots of experts in the field, and you know, come highly recommended. You have to look for it and don't recreate the wheel. So instruction, as we noted earlier, our goal was to enhance instruction in tiers 1 through 3 and really improve the literacy growth of our students. We knew that it was urgent and we couldn't wait. So the connection, we wanted to make sure that there was that connection between the universal literacy strategies in the classroom, that classroom instruction, and what was happening in intervention. Because what I was very clear about was that our students were not going to be sent out to intervention for someone else to fix. All of our students were our students, and we were working together. No one was fixing anyone else's students. Literacy is a foundational communication skill, and we all work together to ensure that our students are literate and proficient in literacy. So classroom instruction and intervention are intricately connected. So in this situation then, we did not want to have students moving from intervention back into the classroom and then there being some sort of a regression. So to avoid this, we wanted to ensure that professional learning at the beginning of the year, that foundational professional learning, in the pillars, they're the keys to a literacy, structured literacy, helped our universal classroom instruction or reinforce our classroom instruction. We wanted to make sure that the 5 pillars of literacy, professional learning, reinforced what was happening in intervention, so that the classroom teachers would begin to utilize these universal strategies in their classroom. And our desired results were that we expected all teachers to implement them. Now, I use the word expected because we have high expectations, but we also need to be able to give people grace and meet them where they're at, and understanding that we do have to go slow to grow. And so we expect that the implementation of the universal strategies will happen at different rates with different teachers at different sites. And the understanding also is that we were in the middle of an atypical year. And so what happened in the classrooms was we did see the universal strategies for structured literacy occurring, and but they did occur at different rates. But we were still very thrilled to see how the implementation did blossom, and it did root itself in the classrooms. And so in this first year, we committed to the priority of using the 3T screeners to establish the student baseline, to determine literacy achievement. And we used these to provide us an understanding of who was going to receive the pull-out intervention. So we realized quickly that more than 2/3 of our students would be receiving intervention. So in October, the program began, and then we retested in February, and those who did show growth based on the criteria that we set graduated out of the intervention program, and those who needed it stayed for another 16 weeks. But what that did was it allowed us space so that we could add some grade 1 students to our intervention program who, through some screening, indicated that they also needed to have some pull-out intervention. And so while the intervention was happening, we had universal classroom instruction happening in structured literacy. Our classroom teachers were using resources such as Haggerty. There was resources from Kilpatrick, and we saw growth in our students' literacy. It was cumbersome at the very beginning as teachers were moving through it, as teachers were, making that shift from balanced literacy, moving through, sound walls and decodables and finding resources and talking with their colleagues. And we were going through classrooms. It was a shift, and it was difficult in some regard. But as we moved through October and November and in January, there's excitement. And teachers were looking for, they're waiting and they're anticipating when they could start to do those screens because they could see improvement and growth, and students were reading. And so by January, when we were starting to get ready to do those screens again, there was an eagerness and celebration. And by June, when we did our final screeners, we were celebrating, and teachers were excited because the work that had been done all year had paid off. And now this year, we have the data. We've determined who's ready to go into intervention. We're going to start up that intervention right away. And our teachers are poised to begin right away with universal classroom instruction in structured literacy. And we're refining, we're ready to go. And we've charted our course on this journey. So the data really helped us to reinforce the work that we had been doing all year, that yes, we are on the right path. And the fact that the intervention, it did work. And the classroom instruction was critical and necessary to ensure that what happened in intervention wasn't lost. So those two married together, they were a partnership, a critical partnership, and one couldn't have been successful without the other. Our administrators were paramount in the encouragement, the praise. They were the cheerleaders. They spent countless hours in classrooms ensuring that teachers had the resources, they had the stamina, they had answered questions. They were the go-betweens for between senior admin and teachers, and the go-betweens between George and us, just making sure that the teachers had what they needed for success. I showed you this, I did show you this website already, but I wanted to just show you this piece right here. We created this website where all teachers could access. And this had everything that teachers needed to be able to access resources, instruction, any just types of books or other types of information around literacy. And we wanted to ensure that it was updated so that if they needed a quick how to, where to, what should they could always go there and find the information that they needed. And so we had that created as well. And it had, all of the resources on the quick menu up here, as well as down here. And so you can, as I move on to, well, what did we learn and where are we going to go? The summation of our chapter 1 is simply this: it all works together, and we truly are just at the beginning stages. But we can't separate it, because when implementing change, you really do have to have it working in concert, but you have to go slow in order to grow, and everyone goes at their own pace. So it really was a year of growing and changing and reflecting. And we consider, as system leaders, the broad division-wide impacts that happen as a result. Our staff were willing to hone their knowledge and skills. And so many cases, they were already investigating and looking to improve instructional frameworks around literacy because they knew that something was missing. There was a disconnect. But because we implemented change division-wide, everyone from kinder to grade 6 was being asked to, take that leap of faith in the middle of pandemic conditions. And change their practice in September of 2021. Our French immersion teachers, had never leveraged resources like those provided either by Alberta Education or by ourselves, asking to, have screeners on their students. And as division leaders, we planned to support our staff in meeting these challenges in various ways. We opened conversations. We were always there and present. We knew we needed to be available. We knew we had to be on a learning journey together in order to alleviate anxiety and ensure that no one is left behind. As system leaders, if we're asking people to trust us, we need to make sure that we are open and that we're worthy of people's trust by being transparent, honest, and clearly communicate. I said it before, we need to go slow to grow. I, by nature, tend to be impatient and want to see results immediately. But this was truly a test for me where I knew that I had to slow down a little bit, and I appreciated the opportunity to learn deeply alongside my colleagues. We employ collaborative response, as I mentioned before, response to intervention. And one way that we were able to support staff in meeting the challenges of taking this leap of faith was to focus on one of our key issues being literacy. And this just allowed for staff to have one other space where we could talk about literacy in a low risk situation. So literacy conversations were happening more consistently. And it allowed them additional time to reflect and renew continuums of support, allow for conversations, a vehicle for conversations to happen where it was non-judgmental. We were talking about practice, but it wasn't my practice. It was just literacy practice. It wasn't personal. And so having these opportunities and creating opportunities for conversations to take place around literacy was especially important. So as a system leader, this became evident to me early on, and moving forward this year, I am going to find opportunities to continue to make space for literacy conversations to happen formally and informally at all levels of our organization. The second challenge is around skill set. So as our staff took leaps of faith and shifted their practice, we experienced many challenges. COVID-19 restrictions, lack of substitute teachers, even when people wanted to practice the newly acquired skills, it was difficult because student absenteeism rose. So what we quickly realized was around professional learning. We needed to be really intentional and offer targeted professional learning and make sure that it was really strategically offered. So this year, in order to ensure our students experience optimal growth, we're going to be developing a very comprehensive professional learning plan that is very flexible and provides just-in-time learning for our staff. While we're going to have some foundational workshops that are necessary for all staff to take, we're going to be offering synchronous, asynchronous. We're going to be offering bite-sized where they can come together in groups. They can, action. They can, do a lesson plan. They can, deliver something, and then they can come together as a group. They can collaborate. They can talk about what worked and what didn't work, and then go back and revise it, and then redo it, and have that other delivery once again to try to refine it and make it better. We want to make sure that the literacy foundations and what they're doing is aligned to our plan and to their plan, so that the how of instruction and assessment is always first and foremost in their minds. Also, we want to make sure that accessing and providing professional learning for French immersion educational staff is a top priority. That was a challenge last year, and we're really looking forward this year to increasing collaboration and access for our French immersion staff. And we're going to try to do this through different educational partners, because this is a high need and it's a high priority for us. Thirdly is data. We want to make sure that we're demystifying our data, learning to collect valid data to make sure that we're using the data properly is really important. So we quickly realized how using data, collecting it, analyzing it is really a team effort. And so this year, we want to make sure that we are building collective and individual efficacy with school leaders and teachers that are going to help them and support them in demystifying this data. It's no surprise that our staff have varying degrees of comfort in data analysis, and like any learners, we need to meet them where they're at. So we're going to be providing schools with workshops and then elbow to elbow contextual to support to ensure that our staff can use the data to inform instructional decisions. We want to streamline our assessment timeline and make sure that we're communicating it broadly. We also want to ensure that staff communicate and continue to learn more broadly about how to use the data. And we want to ensure that they own this process. These are their data sheets. This is going to help them. It's something that will help their students grow. And so we go back to that data starts conversations. It doesn't end it. And so with this in mind, our conversations will continue to be ongoing. And then change in general poses innumerable challenges, and change in the midst of uncertainty like that which we experienced last year required continual reflection and growth. So that shift in mindset from balanced literacy to structured literacy was a challenge because it meant restructuring class schedules, replacing accepted practices, and then reconsidering how do we repurpose current resources or employ new resources. So our French immersion teachers especially, we needed to look at their specific needs and how we could position them for success. And so with all of these challenges in mind, we had lots on our plate. So this year, what we need to do is we need to make sure that we have constant reminders about how to extend grace to ourselves and everyone in our care. We took on monumental tasks this year. And while not everything went as planned, we need to celebrate everything, every step along the path. We need to understand how our work has only started, but we need to communicate every step in this journey to our stakeholders. And that includes our teachers who are doing the work, because they need to understand the why behind the decisions in order to be empowered. They need to understand the who and the when in order to be prepared and to participate. They need to understand the how and the what in the process to feel confident and capable in order to engage. So moving forward, the word commitment articulates our plans, and literacy is not a 1, a 3, or a 5-year initiative. In fact, for us, literacy isn't an initiative. Literacy is foundational communication and our commitment, because it's what we have made for all of our students for now and into the future. So I thank you very much, Catherine, and all of you here on the webinar today. This is our story, and as I said, we're just beginning, and we have lots to learn, and we'll continue to learn. And I thank you for the opportunity to share our story.
Well, thank you so much for being willing to share your story. It's an amazing story, and I feel that it's very important to share and realize that there are districts in Canada making this change, finding the support and the resources for their teachers and supporting them throughout the school year, not just a one-off Prody that we're not going to see the support. One of the problems that we see when we do a professional development on a particular program or particular strategy, we get that information in one day. We're only able to remember it so much. And then in the implementation, there's a loss in translation. So it's about understanding that that is a natural process and that we need support to continue on and learn more. I think you're doing a fantastic job, and the students in your district are definitely very fortunate to have you. I love that you have a dynamic intervention model where you aren't just saying, okay, student A is in the intervention for the entire year and that's it. You're doing the progress monitoring and the screening to decide who needs to graduate out and who needs to come in. This year, you're starting the race running because you already know from your screening at the year end in June which students are going to need that support right away. So we're not wasting the first couple of months of school with screening and trying to figure out, oh, what did they lose in the summer? It's making it a more effective approach to instruction. And your excitement was contagious for everything that's happening in your district. What would your advice be to someone who is a superintendent or in your position trying to make these changes district-wide? Right now, so many schools and teachers are doing this as a grassroots movement and struggling getting a buy-in at the district level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question, Catherine. So when I first started on this journey, I wasn't the superintendent. I was the deputy superintendent in charge of curriculum, but I had a really strong relationship with the teachers. And as teachers, I think it's really important that, you know, you continue to have those really strong relationships with your administrators and with your superintendents and with your deputy superintendents or directors, you know, however your organizational chart is, because whether you're doing it as a school or whether you're doing it as a division, it's important that you share the stories of practice that are happening in your schools. As a superintendent, you know, it's important that we know what is happening in your classrooms. Your stories enliven our work. We're not disconnected from what's going on in the schools. You are people. The children are, the students are our students. The teachers are our teachers, and we want what's best for our divisions. And I can only speak for myself, but the research speaks for it, and so does the evidence. This is what's best for kids. This is what's best for our students. And so we all want what's best for our students. And so I think it's really important that these stories are shared, and that's that piece, that's that story that brings it to life, because it is clumsy, and change is change. But when we hear the stories and we know that this works, you can't stop it. You don't want to stop it. This will happen.
Yeah, I love
So,
to
sorry. And so my advice for superintendents really is that if you are uncertain of whether or not you should go down this path, there's a couple of things. Number one, you need to reach out to other superintendents. You need to talk to other people to see whether or not this is the appropriate choice to make. Number two is you need to do your homework. You need to do the research and see. And you need to talk to your staff. You need to talk to your stakeholders. And I don't think I'm saying anything that other superintendents don't already know, because superintendents are pretty wise people, and they do all these things anyways. And they'll make the best decision for their staff and for their students.
Yeah. And it's definitely important to, you know, foster that growth mindset. Yeah. And realize that, yes, your years of experience and what brought you to your position today are very valid. And we need to be in the position where we understand that research is changing, and we need to keep up with that and realize when we need to go back and say, you know what we've done in the past within this district, the resources that we've created, the strategies that we've used, we now know are not best practices. And instead of saying, okay, well, yeah, you know what, use it, saying, you know what, we're going to make a change and remove these from our curriculum. Yes, parents and teachers and students may be used to strategies such as, multi-cueing, looking at pictures and guessing at words, but that's something that we need to say that needs to stop for this September. We need to remove those strategies and have the support for teachers to create new strategies for their students.
Yeah, and I agree, Catherine. We need to look at the data. If your students are not progressing, then you need to do a deep dive. There is a disconnect. If you have data and your data is showing that there is no growth, you need to start asking some tough questions. And you have to be willing. You need to be willing to accept some of those answers. And when you look at what the answers might be, now that you're aware of what some of the issues are, you need to be willing to action them. And that takes courage. And but in reality, there is no time to waste. We only have 12 years with our students. And I say that because kindergarten in Alberta is not mandatory. So we have 12 years with students. And when we really think about it, those first 3 years are critical. So we have no time to waste. So we need to be willing to ask some hard questions of ourselves. And if we don't have all of the answers, we need to find people who do have the answers. Mm-hmm. And I said it before in my presentation. We don't have to have all the answers ourselves, but there are people out there who do have the answers. And in this regard, that's the wisest thing that we can do. You know, if we have the information at our fingertips, and we know what's the best choice for students, and we need to action that. So that's my advice. Look at our data, ask some tough questions if the tough questions need to be asked, and then make a plan to action it out so that our students can start to improve in literacy. And not all students are the same. Not all contexts are the same. We're all going to be a little bit more unique. We all are unique. All contexts are going to be a little bit different, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But if we're seeing growth, that's the end in mind. We need to see growth.
Definitely. And I think it's important to mention that, yes, there are people that have been, the gurus that go to individuals for professional development who are very strongly trained and involved in the balanced literacy and whole language approach that are trying to rebrand with a structured literacy or a science of reading model while they are doing that learning. And the danger there is they're on that learning journey so that they're going to have those stumbles and mistakes, and recognize that we do have Canadian experts across the across the country that have this knowledge, and they are the ones that we should be sourcing for the professional development opportunities, not individuals that are just in the beginning stages of their process. There's nothing wrong with starting out on the process and doing it, but recognizing there is a vast amount of knowledge and some pretty big shifts in understanding and how we are moving from that constructivist approach to literacy, reading instruction and spelling, to more an explicit method to ensure that every student is getting the information that they need to learn to read, and we're supporting them along the way so that they don't have to wait long. The other important thing to mention is that this generation of students that we're working with has a very unique experience that we haven't had in educational history, with the shutdowns and the absenteeism and just how they were interacting, especially those students coming into primary school and kindergarten. They would not have had what was typical for students before. They may not have attended a preschool. They wouldn't have the same activities. So need to have a heightened awareness. And I think it really highlights the importance for screening all students and delivering appropriate instruction from the start.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree entirely. One other piece I didn't mention, but I really would like to just add on here. In our last year, we also, for resources, we were really tight on determining division-wide resources, that we were all going to use the same program, because we wanted to make sure that, just as you had said, Catherine, that mind shift, or that shift in practice between balanced literacy and structured literacy. How much of the classroom instruction, what percentage of classroom instruction is actually still balanced literacy, and how much is actually structured literacy? So there were some pieces that we were very tight on, that we said, no, everybody has to do this particular program. Now, typically, I'm not a fan of that. However, in this regard, I was tight on that. But after a year, and we listened to feedback from our teachers too, because I mean, we're new. We didn't necessarily know if we were picking the right one. But after a year and reviewing different types of programs, what we did is we actually didn't use the same program that we used the first year, because we realized it wasn't the right fit for us. Not that it was a bad program, it just wasn't the right fit for us in our context, in where we were demographically, or whatever. But it was really good, because what we heard was, we actually really liked that we were all using the same program, because then we all knew we could have these conversations. We were all on the same path, because we were all doing this huge shift together. So I found that was really interesting. I mean, here nor there, like, it didn't really matter the program. Like, it mattered the program, because we ended up choosing the right program for us. But what I found really interesting was that in the end, that shift happened, and there was such a positive feedback from everybody wanting to be able to have those generative conversations around the same resource or the same program. And it really, it was positive, and it created that collaborative piece where we could have best practices, a sharing of best practices, and increase our efficacy around those best practices in the classroom. So I really appreciated that, and that's something that we're taking into this next year.
Wonderful. Now, I'm sure, when you're starting this implementation, you're going to have questions and teachers to say, but what about teacher autonomy? How would you respond to that? I know my personal response, it's not your choice whether your students learn to read, and you can't choose what to teach them, because there is a set of skills that have to be taught. And I find it very interesting where when it comes to reading instruction, there's such this strong opinion. But when we look at mathematics curriculum, in kindergarten, kids are learning 1 to 20 or like 1 to 100, right? That's expected. So why can't we have that same expectation for literacy instruction?
Well, I think, there's always that autonomy piece in every single in every single teaching curriculum, but we're really going to look at this as an opportunity, especially with the advent of new curriculum, because when we're all in this together, we're journeying as a group. We're going into this collectively, and the autonomy comes when we personalize it. It's not about, I'm going to go out on a limb and teach something completely different. No, you have autonomy when you personalize it and you put your personal touch on it. That's autonomy. There's different levels of autonomy. Autonomy doesn't necessarily mean you teach using this resource and I teach using this resource. Autonomy might mean I'm going to use this decodable book and you're going to use that decodable book, but it still has the same grapheme phoneme sequence. There's different levels of it. I think that, you know, we need to give people a little bit of we need to give them a little bit of autonomy or flexibility, but people still need to realize that we are being tight about this is the way that we're going to be doing this. And in the end, it's because our vision statement is Christ is our model, children are our focus. Children are our focus. We're taking ourselves out of the equation. It's about children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I'm just going to read one of the comments in the chat because I don't know how better to put it myself, but it's saying, thank you, Pamela. So enlightening. And I appreciate your roadmap. Your willingness to ask those tough questions and respond urgently is refreshing. And it really is, especially when it's a difficult time. There have been so many challenges that have come up, but still being able to focus on the student and what's best interest of their learning despite COVID, and still making those changes. So thank you so much.